You probably know that there have been a lot of changes recently that affect BCBA certification. And to help explain these changes, I created a reel last year that I posted to my Instagram account. But given that some of these changes are a little bit more relevant now than others, given that an entire year has passed, I decided to re-upload the video here so that way you could kind of skip ahead to look at the changes that are most relevant to you. Now, a bit of a caveat here. I did create this video over a year ago in my basement, so forgive the quality. All right, let's jump in. Hey, there's been a lot of confusion about the upcoming changes to the eligibility requirements and content on the BCBA exam. So I contacted ABAI to get information on these changes straight from the source. And they were kind enough to review the content of this video for accuracy before I posted it, so you can be sure that you're getting the right information. Okay, let's jump into some of the most common questions that I have been seeing online. First, will I be testing under the 5th or 6th edition? Everyone, no matter the circumstances, will be testing under the 6th edition starting January 1st, 2025. But what if I initially took the test under the 5th edition and I'm just retesting after January 1st? You will still be testing under the 6th edition beginning January 1st, regardless of whether you tested under a different edition previously. There are no exceptions here. Everyone will be testing under the 6th edition starting January 1st, 2025. Okay, well, what about the number of questions on the exam? Has that changed? Nope. There will still be 185 questions, with 175 being scored questions and 10 being unscored pilot questions. Will I need to study additional content, or will my 5th edition coursework be sufficient to prepare me for the 6th edition exam? Although the changes to this edition are not impacting the eligibility requirements, there are some changes to what the exam will cover. This means that if you completed 5th edition coursework, you will still be eligible to apply until December 31st, 2026. However, you may want to adjust your studying to be sure you're prepared. To see exactly what's been changed, you can visit the recent and upcoming changes page on the BACB's website and check out the February 2022 newsletter. I'm also creating a crosswalk that provides a detailed comparison of the 5th and 6th editions so you can see exactly what was changed. A total of 13 tasks were added, and because these are brand new task list items, there is a chance that they weren't covered in your program. For example, there are new tasks about identifying the role of multiple control and verbal behavior, identifying ways the matching law can be used to interpret response allocation, and distinguishing between imitation and observational learning, among others. It's always a good idea to study before you take the BCBA exam, but if you will be testing on or after January 1st, 2025, you will need to be studying the content on the 6th edition test content outline to be sure you're prepared. Okay, next question. Will I need to get additional supervision hours if I do not pass by January 1st? No, the only thing that's changing January 1st, 2025 is the content of the exam. There are additional changes in 2026 and 2027, but these apply to the eligibility and educational requirements, not the number of fieldwork hours you need. The March 2022 newsletter outlines some changes in 2027 to the supervised fieldwork, but these changes do not impact the number of hours needed. Will I need to take additional coursework if I don't pass by January 1st? No. Again, the only thing that's changing on January 1st, 2025 is the content of the exam. The educational requirements are not changing until January 1st, 2027, but the way that you apply for the exam might change January 1st, 2026, depending on which pathway you're eligible under. Okay, so how are the eligibility requirements changing? To understand how the requirements are changing, it's important to first understand the current eligibility requirements. Because the number of fieldwork hours needed will not be changing, we will focus on the differences in eligibility pathways. There are currently 4 ways that you can become eligible to take the BCBA exam. The first way is to have a graduate degree from an APBA accredited program, an ABAI accredited program, or an ABAI recognized program at Tier 1, Tier 2A, or Tier 2B. The second way is probably how most of you meet eligibility requirements. It's how I was eligible when I sat for the exam in 2016. and that's by having a graduate degree in behavior analytic coursework, which is typically obtained through a program offering a verified course sequence. Or you may have gotten your graduate degree and then later completed a non-degree program, such as a certificate, that was offered as a verified course sequence. This is where programs submit their course of study to a governing body, previously the BACB and now ABAI, to ensure it meets all the Pathway 2 coursework requirements. If your program offers a VCS, it will probably have a logo like this or like this somewhere on the website. The final two ways to become eligible are not commonly used. Those include faculty teaching and research and postdoctoral experience. Okay, now that we know how you can currently become eligible, let's talk about the changes. In January 2023, ABAI and the BACB released a joint statement announcing that ABAI would be discontinuing the VCS system that was started by the BACB. Specifically, on January 1st, 2025, ABAI will stop accepting all new 5th edition BACB VCS applications. This means that college and university programs will no longer be able to submit their coursework for review and receive the VCS seal if they don't already have a VCS program in place. On January 1st, 2025, ABAI will no longer process VCS renewals. This means that if a college or university already has a 5th edition VCS program in place, ABAI will work with them to ensure their VCS is active through December 31st, 2025. Now, these two timeline events probably won't affect you. They have more of an effect on the colleges and universities with VCS programs. But they are important to understand because the next timeline event will affect you if you're in a VCS program and plan to test in 2026 or later. On January 1st, 2026, the VCS directory will be retired, meaning that you will no longer be able to search online for a VCS program. You will also no longer be able to select your program from a list of VCS programs when applying to take the exam. Instead, your VCS coordinator will need to complete and submit a coursework attestation form verifying that you're eligible to sit for the exam as documentation that you've met coursework requirements. Finally, on January 1st, 2032, the only way to become eligible to take the BCBA exam will be through Pathway 1, meaning that you will need to hold a master's degree or higher from an ABAI accredited program or an APBA accredited program. Now, you might be wondering whether you attended an accredited program because the changes to the eligibility requirements will not affect you if your program was accredited or recognized at the time your degree was conferred. These changes only apply to people who received their degree from a non-accredited program. And I do want to emphasize that it's whether your program was accredited at the time you graduate that determines whether or not you were impacted by these changes, not the focus of your degree. The BACB does not require the degree to be an applied behavior analysis, whether you are applying for Pathway 1 or Pathway 2. ABAI and APBA may accredit degrees in a number of related fields. So if your degree came from an accredited program, it may be in applied behavior analysis, or it may be in education, social work, psychology, or another related field, as long as it was accredited by ABAI or APBA. Additionally, the BACB allows students to meet the degree requirement via Pathway 2 with any graduate degree from a qualifying institution. However, if your program was not accredited, then you will be impacted by these changes. To find out whether your program is accredited or recognized, you can visit ABAI's website or APBA's website. It's important to note that at the time of this recording, APBA doesn't yet have any accredited programs, but they will likely have some in the future. However, ABAI does have all currently accredited doctoral and master's programs, as well as programs that have applied for accreditation on their website. Be sure to look for the specific degree name, as an institution may offer certain degrees that have received an accreditation status and other degrees that are not accredited. If you do not see your specific degree listed, that means it's not an accredited degree program. It's important to note that eligible to apply and under review do not denote an accreditation status. ABAI also provides the same information for recognized programs. Okay, let's get back to the original question. Will you have to take additional coursework if you don't pass the exam? One thing that I didn't put on the timeline because it deserves a separate discussion is the change to the educational requirements. Beginning January 1st, 2027, not only will Pathways 3 and 4 be discontinued, but any student applying via Pathway 2, meaning they did not complete their degree from an accredited program and likely completed a VCS, will also have to meet updated coursework requirements. Whether you'll need to take additional coursework or not is a little more difficult to say because remember, starting January 1st, 2026, programs that are not accredited will have to complete attestation forms verifying your coursework meets requirements since the VCS system will have sunset. A lot of programs are currently revising their coursework to meet the 2027 Pathway 2 coursework requirements, but there's really no way to know which programs are doing this given that there will no longer be a VCS directory beginning in 2026. So the best way to know whether your program meets updated 2027 Pathway 2 coursework requirements is to contact your VCS coordinator. And I know I said this before, but it does bear repeating that there are no changes to programs who are APBA accredited or ABAI accredited or recognized. So if you're eligible under Pathway 1, then none of these changes apply to you. However, you have to be eligible under Pathway 1 at the time your degree was conferred, meaning that if you graduate under a VCS program, but your program later becomes accredited before you apply to take the exam, then you will still have to comply with the changes that I summarized in this recording, given that your program wasn't accredited or recognized when you completed your coursework. And the focus of your degree, whether it's in ABA, education, or a related field, does not matter. These changes apply to you regardless of your degree if you're completing coursework in a verified course sequence. Okay, so that was a lot of information. If you'd like to read more about these changes, you can scan this QR code to access a Google Doc with links to all of the information that I shared. And be sure to follow my Instagram account for updates and study resources, including the crosswalk that I referenced earlier that describes all of the changes to the 6th edition test content outline. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all. Best of luck in your studying.